Hey, Kevin Noe here again from Fight Designer LLC with another YouTube video. This one is by request, a question about how to decommission airsoft props, magazines, rifles, whatever, for theatrical and film use. First off, I'm sorry about the sound of the 3D printer running in the background. This does actually relate to what we're talking about. So here's the thing. When we're talking about airsoft electric guns or airsoft spring guns, there's a lot you can easily do to decommission them because the function of the prop isn't really related to the function of the BB firing ability of the airsoft props. When we're talking electric blowback, airsoft gas blowback, CO2 blowback, one of the other blowback functions where the prop function of cycling the slide, cycling the bolt, is related to the function of BB firing that they were originally built to do. Then we have a little bit more to think about in terms of how do we do this in a way that gives us what we want to have in terms of the effect of a real firearm and doesn't have what we don't want in terms of firing a projectile on set. So I've talked in my book, The Theatrical Firearms Handbook, and videos and other things about my usual trick of just jamming something in here. Now, some of these magazines, sometimes with the gas blowback magazines, you can just remove the spring. But some of them you can't because the little thing here that holds the magazine base plate in is pushed down by the same spring that pushes the follower up that loads the BBs into the prop to fire our little 6mm plastic BBs. So if I remove the spring, yes, that decommissions it so it can't feed BBs into the prop, but it also means that the base plate won't stay on. So with gas blowback, often what I end up doing is just jamming it down. Now this is for two reasons. One, so that it won't feed BBs in there to be able to shoot projectiles, because that's a safety issue obviously on set. But also because on most gas blowback props, the slide or bolt is made to lock back when it's out of ammunition, like the real thing. And we don't want it to lock back when it's out of ammunition, out of BBs, because we don't want to use real ammunition, and we want to pretend that it's actually firing ammunition, so we need to kind of trick it into thinking it's not out of ammunition. And just jamming some foil, aluminum foil, is probably the easiest way to do it. I've also done it on set, just, field expediency with cardboard from craft services or other things like that. Sometimes you can break off the tip of the follower with a pair of pliers. Sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I can't. And if it's not the thing that holds the base plate in, then you can just remove the whole spring and not have to worry about that. But I recently found a pattern for a 3D printed, and this is why I said it's relevant that the printer is still going in the background, a little 3D printed thing that you can, where's my camera? There we go. That you can just set in here in such a way it slides right in, so it's sort of a fake follower. And I posted a video a little while back on blank firing and real firearms magazine insert thing that makes it feel like it's not out of ammunition when it is. And this kind of does the same thing for a gas blowback magazine. So this is the 3D printed thing that I just inserted here. Now it does the exact same thing that the foil does, but it looks maybe a little more professional, a little less obvious. Now, you can still tell if you see the magazine being inserted into the prop. You can still tell that these are airsoft magazines by the way that we can see this open window in the front with the spring. I do have some especially extended magazines, like on the Glock 18Cs, where it's the high-capacity magazine, where you can see that spring, where I have filled this in so that we don't have to have that obvious giveaway that it's an airsoft. But where it goes inside the prop, we don't really care as much. But, there's something to be said for it just looking a little bit more professional and a little less obvious. So, kudos to the dude who put this up on Thingiverse, and I'll put a link up there for anybody else who wants to 3D print their own, or I'm happy to sell some. Because, as with a real magazine, and here's a 3D printed version of a real magazine, speaking of 3D printers, because it's a pet peeve of mine when people have a tack vest or ammo pouches that are empty. And it's obvious they're empty. And why do you have the tack vest with all these pouches full of nothing? sound and fury signifying nothing. So having some dummy magazines with some dummy rounds in them can help kind of sell that illusion just a little bit. And this was a 3D printed version of both a 3D printed round and a 3D printed clock magazine that I can put in a fake holster or something. This combination can allow our gas blowback magazines to be able to cycle as though they were firing live rounds, to give that slide motion that we want as though it were firing. You can CG in the muzzle flash, you can CG in the shell casings if you really want to. Half the time you don't see either muzzle flash in the daytime or shell casings if it's fast enough, whatever. You put the sound in, people could swear they saw them. But, you know, if it's slow motion or something, yeah, you need to put that in. But CG is getting so much cheaper and easier every year, so, you know, the reason why we want to have gas blowback is so the actor on set has something to respond to, and so the effect person knows where to put it in, because I've seen movies where I told them, hey, you need a sound cue in here, and they never put one in, and it just sounds fake. So yeah, this little 3D printed insert can be a nice addition. You can still see, if you see someone slide the magazine in, it is still a bit of a giveaway. This top feeder thing is a giveaway that it's an Airsoft magazine. If it is this kind of magazine where you can see where the gas gets inserted, that's a bit of a giveaway for gas blowback magazine. Not all have that. Some of the especially like the Umarex Glock magazines have the actual base plate that has the logo and everything else, and you have to slide the magazine out, the magazine base plate to be out of the way to be able to load the gas into it. But that's part of why we have to keep that spring there, which is why it's nice to have a somewhat discreet insert to do that rather than being able to pull the spring entirely. But what about rifles, you say? Glad you asked. Take a look at this poster for Nobody. Nobody, great movie, not gonna bash it at all. Some great folks worked on it who managed to graduate all the way from stunt work to directing, and somewhere on the line, someone should have known better than to put a magazine on the cover where you can see this plate on the bottom that is a dead giveaway that this is an Airsoft electric gun. Now the AEGs, not the gas blowback, but the AEGs, the Airsoft electric guns, tend to have this little wheel on the bottom here that you wind to kind of load the spring to feed the BBs out this little thing in the front so that it can shoot BBs to win your Airsoft match. So this is completely idiosyncratic to Airsoft guns. It sticks out a little bit. You can see the teeth kind of sticking out there maybe. Let's put it against my face because that's wider. Yeah, you can see those teeth there. So this is a bit of a dead giveaway, and you can see it in that poster for Nobody, which is kind of unfortunate. And it pops up in other things. So most of these magazines, they have one of these, this little wheel here, that when you wind up, the teeth help wind up the magazine that helps push the BBs forward to feed them into the Airsoft M4 or whatever. Sometimes it's a hex wrench, sometimes it's a Phillips head, but in general, unlike a real magazine where you might push in and slide out the base plate, in this, when you unscrew the hex wrench or the Phillips head or whatever it is, there's a little screw in the bottom. You take this out, and then the top actually comes out. Let's get this here. And so you get something like this. And you can see how there's this wheel as a part of this. And it's usually kind of snapped on from a little piece on the other side. And often there's a little thing like this. Let me see, we can see that there. A little thing like this that kind of snaps over the tip. And just snap this off the other end, and then you can pull this wheel off so that it won't load these little plastic BBs. Now this particular one here, yeah, there's a little, oh, it's darkened, so it's a little harder to see. But if you just take a pocket knife and snap that thing off, boop, there it goes. Now this pulls off, so you no longer have that wheel sticking out. But when you slide this back in, you do still have a gap here in the back of the magazine, plus this thing sticking up. So what I've done on some of mine, including one that I just sent off, is cut off that feeder bit at the top and fill in the bottom so that it's at least closer to flat. And I just used some JB Weld, and you know, it's not perfect. This was a quickie job, but it's live theater. Nobody's going to see it up super close anyway. But at least it's not an obvious gap the way it is with this one that I just pulled off. Now this was a bit of an experiment, but I also put a 3D printed, again, to why that sound's going in the background, 3D printed 223 or 5.56 NATO round that was sort of cut in half, so it was flat, so it wouldn't stick up as much. Now I know this is not the same as a real one. I've seen the real ones. I have the real ones. Yes, you'd have little lips coming up the side to hold it so it doesn't pop up the top. But if it's just a quick shot, this is at least a little bit something more that makes it look not completely like an airsoft, both on the bottom here where that plate would be, and on the top where on an airsoft you have the feeder lips. On a real one you'd have the little things on the side keeping the round from popping out. So this is an airsoft electric gun. It doesn't have the blowback function. But if you need to be able to show some of the same cycling actions on stage, and this was for, I just sent one of these off, well, 1.5, some spare parts, for a live theatrical production that required some moving parts. They're just doing a scene on a range or something. And so for that, this kind of thing is fine. You don't need the gas blowback because those magazines cost a lot more. The AEGs are cheaper. But it allows us to have some of that functionality of showing a magazine coming out, going in, showing the charging handle, the dust cover. Now the charging handles on these AEGs don't go all the way back, and you can kind of see the gears there. But they at least go part of the way back, so you know, you at least get some of that action. It's a little bit less so than you get with the gas blowback, but it's something. And this doesn't have a top handle or rear sight because I just sent it off with that other prop for the rental in Wisconsin. But it gives you the idea. So here's one that I have not done yet, and some brands it sticks up even a little bit more there, but I cut that off flush. Some it does not as much. But sort of a before and after of the Airsoft M4 magazines for the AEG, with and without this weird Airsoft buzzsaw looking thing, and the Airsoft magazines for the gas blowback with the old school foil that I used to do, and with the new 3D printed insert that was super quick and easy and cost all of like 10 cents in parts to be able to do. Now these base plates can also be swapped out. So for example, here's one of the Umarex ones with the Glock logos. You can see that on there. But it does also have this piece right here that has to be pushed in to be able to slide the base plate out. And that does require manipulating this same spring that operates the feeder lip here. But if you push that in, you can slide the base plate off. So here you can see without the base plate. And you can also, of course, slide on optional different base plates. So here's an example of a 3D printed base plate extension. Now, in real life, while you might do some of these can also increase the capacity of the magazine. So something like this might actually add 2 or 3 rounds to your magazine in real life, or it can also just make it a little more durable. So it can be kind of a bumper. So if you're doing one of those John Wick tactical reload kind of things where you flip it and the magazine goes flying and you slam the next one in, when that magazine goes flying, gas blowback magazines are not cheap. And you know, Terran Tactical and others make these magazine extensions that can slide on. So this would be an example of a 3D printed magazine extension that can go on one of those Airsoft gas blowback magazines, which incidentally can also make it match a little bit better. This would be a 3D printed, this one's actually a Glock 22 with a tactical red dot scope and raised sights to work with that, threaded barrel, which can work with a suppressor. This is actually a thread protector right now, but there's a 3D printed suppressor that can go on there as well. And as you can see, it came, the file itself came with this automatically extended magazine on it. Now, I still have to find one that's a better match. This is not an exact match, but it's pretty close. And I bet if I just had to do this as a quick double for one of my Glock 17s, it's pretty darn close, and it would probably work. So, completely 3D printed firearm, gas blowback magazine with 3D printed extension, gas blowback magazine with original magazine baseplate with logos, 3D printed insert for magazine as opposed to the aluminum foil insert to jam up the follower so the slide won't lock back, as compared to completely 3D printed dummy magazine, which could work in a real prop. So I hope this is useful. Again, I had some inquiries as to how do you disable your airsoft guns? Because we really don't ever want anybody to be able to fire BBs on set. I have rented props out and had them come back with plastic BBs in the magazines, which, what the hell are you thinking? Really? So there are times, including that one, where it's a gas blowback prop, where we don't want to disable the gas blowback function of the prop. So usually what I do is try to disable the BB feeding function of the magazine, which can also help it not have slide lock, which can also help it look more like a real magazine and not like a prop magazine, and can still keep the prop in its original form and function in case you ever want to sell it on eBay or something if you're, for some reason, downsizing. Incidentally, I also just, especially with these airsoft electric guns, I never rent these out with the batteries, and sometimes I'll snip the wires. That's super easy to do. So if you take this handguard off, the battery usually goes in here. This is really easy to just snip these and just make sure it can never be used again, if that's what you're wanting to do. If you're trying to do some kind of filmmaking on the cheap thing and shoot your film in 2 weeks and then return the prop on Amazon, good for you. And yeah, you might want to not do anything permanent like that. And in that case, you might want to use the aluminum foil and just take out the battery and all that stuff. For what it's worth, I've also had decent luck recently with replacing some of the extra orange birdcage muzzle flash hiders that I had on some of my airsofts. Most of these I've replaced with metal at this point. But some of them were still the original orange plastic, and I was able to pull some of those off and print off some, tighten the hex wrench on that, and print off some black plastic 3D printed muzzle flash in the original birdcage style, and that worked fine too. So, you know what, I'm really finding now the areas in which this 3D printing can work. There's some things where for an entire prop, it can kind of replace rubber. It's not quite as durable as rubber, but it's close, and it does require a little bit of finishing to fill in the seams. This was printed in 2 spots, in 2 pieces, in halves, so I did have to do some work to fill in the seam between the 2 halves and things like that, but it's not bad. And there's some things where, you know, the models that I can find online might have some issues. This one I had to patch some areas where it also kind of had a bit of a separation between some of the layers. So that takes more time. But I'm still finding that sweet spot between what is worthwhile for 3D printing and what is not. And with airsoft guns, what is worth decommissioning and what is worth leaving as it is, so that it works fine. So hopefully this saves somebody some time and some effort and some anguish over what do I do. I'm not saying that my way is the only way. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm just saying, hey, here's some things that I found that work. So until next time, I hope that you are staying safe. I hope that you are staying sane. I hope that you are staying looking good, working on good stuff. And, you know, these are rough times for a lot of us. So if you can be doing your art and staying safe and helping others, good for you. That's better than half the planet already. So until next time, you know, this was a request by email, but you can always send me things by comments, by email, by text, whatever. I'm not hard to find. I've recently been updating kevininoue.com if you want to contact me there, or fightdesigner.com, or through PewTube, or through my Fight Designer YouTube channel. I'm not hard to find. So if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. If there's not, you know, that's okay too. And I'll see you when I see you. All right, till next time, thanks.